All right, good morning, everyone. Can people... All right, well, we'll get started in about a few minutes. Just have a few more people joining us in person. All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and start. Can I just get a thumbs up from somebody online that you can hear me? All right, and can you see the slides? Awesome. All right. Okay, welcome everybody. It's been almost 2 years since we've met in person. Some of you I'm seeing you in person for the first time. We've got, I think, 13 people online, so it's split. I think we've got about 8 to 10, if more come in the room. So thanks for being here today. I think I've met all of you, but my name is Daniel Caparella. I do the bike and pedestrian work here at GNRC, and this is our BPAC. If we could just go around the room and say your name if you haven't attended a BPAC meeting before, and then at the end, we're going to do a round robin of member updates where everybody can talk about things they've been working on for the past year. And so if we could just start with, I guess, Robert, just introduce yourself and your organization.
Hello, Robert Johnson with PDOT. I'm in the Multimodal Planning Office. And look, I'm also with Robert.
All right, thanks everybody. Staff, do you want to introduce yourselves real quick? We've got 3 in the room.
Sure. Sean Falter, Transportation Planning Manager with GNRC.
Peter Westerholm, Policy Director at GNRC. And then BPAC members online, if you want to unmute yourself and just say your name and the organization you're with.
I'm Sarah Lovett with the Murfreesboro Bike Club.
I'm
Sarah
Evan with Empower Tennessee.
I'm Bill McCord with the City of Gallatin.
Jason Radiger, NDOT.
Councilmember Angie Henderson, Nashville.
Hi, this is Justin Cole with WeGo.
And this is Adam Blair with the consulting firm EBP.
All right, I think that is everybody. I'll go back to the slides. So here's our agenda today. I'm just going to jump straight into an MPO and GNRC 101. I know we have a lot of new members, and we haven't met in a few months, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what our organization is and what we do. And then we're going to go through some of the feedback y'all provided in our individual check-ins. So thank you to almost all of you. Those individual check-ins were really helpful. We're going to go through some next steps and go over a 2022 meeting calendar. And then we'll have a little time at the end to go around the room, both virtually and in person, to do some member updates and learn about what everybody's been working on in the past year. And then we will get you guys out of here. So I'll start with a quick refresher. For GNRC as a whole, we're one of 9 Tennessee development districts created by the state of Tennessee in the 60s. The state legislature created these to help facilitate local brainstorming on how to invest federal and state dollars into local infrastructure. That's not just transportation, it also includes economic development and investment in social services for the older population and disability community. Development districts and regional councils are pretty interchangeable words. But what you'll see on the screen, that 13 county dark blue district is our development district. And so that's sort of the GNRC footprint. We have 3 main federal and state designations. We're designated by the U.S. Economic Development Administration as the region's economic development district. So their main responsibility is to develop a regional comprehensive economic development strategy, which we refer to as CEDS. We're also designated by the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability as the area agency on aging and disability. So we help prioritize state and federal investments for social services for older or physically disabled Middle Tennesseans. And then, as you all know, we are the metropolitan planning organization for our region. So that federal designation essentially means that we carry out planning requirements in order for our members to be able to use federal funds for transportation. So a little bit of background on how we became both an MPO and a council of governments. So up until 2016, the staff of the MPO was housed in within the metro government, but because of a need to make transportation decisions within a broader context, so including the aging and economic development pieces as well as local planning. The other main reason was to have an organization run by all of our member jurisdictions so they can participate as a group to figure out how to invest federal funds in our region. So now that we are an integrated organization, the MPO program is staffed by the regional council. Lots of our peer metros, so 70%, I think that's also a little bit higher now that San Francisco and Nashville are integrated, but 70% of U.S. metro regions of 1 million people or more have an integrated MPO and council of governments or development district. This process is pretty well documented, but there was a task force and several committees that convened private sector and public agencies and nonprofit partners. And then in 2017, the committee voted to recommend an integration between the regional council and the MPO. This really helps us think about transportation infrastructure beyond our traditional MPO and RPO boundaries. We also support the rural planning organizations in our region. So this is a map of all of the MPOs and RPOs across the state. Our region, Region 3, is broken into 2 MPOs, Nashville and Clarksville. We also coordinate with Clarksville. And then you can see some of the other large MPOs in the state, Knoxville and Memphis and Chattanooga. This is an organizational chart of how we do programming and services. So the 3 bottom programs, the aging and disability programs, the community and regional planning, where we do most of our regional transportation planning as well as local land use planning. And then the economic and community development department at GNRC, they work on the SEDS, as I mentioned before. And then we have our 2 departments up top, the policy and government affairs and our research and analytics team, which sort of work within those bottom 3 departments to assist in services that they're providing. This is our Nashville MPO and GNRC region. So those top 13 counties, including the light blue and the dark blue, those are our GNRC counties, but then our MPO counties are the dark blue, and then we bring in Murray County on the south. This slide talks about our federal requirements as an MPO. So essentially, there is federal legislation that guides a lot of the rules and regulations for the transportation planning process. The latest federal legislation is the FAST Act that was extended by the Infrastructure and Jobs Act that was just passed a few months ago. And through those, we have 10 federal planning factors that we have to follow when we make investment decisions. And I'll highlight a few. To increase the safety of the transportation system for motorized and non-motorized users, that's pretty relevant to BPAC. We have to protect and enhance the environment and promote energy conservation, and we have to enhance the integration and connectivity of the transportation system. So those are all planning factors that we have to use in our planning efforts, whether it's our long-range plans or our short-range plans. Some of you were involved in those processes in the past couple of years with the BPAC. These are those core products. So if some of you remember, the BPAC helped inform the regional transportation plan and the investments laid out in that plan. That plan is our long-range plan, so it goes out 20 years. It establishes vision and goals that we want to achieve as a region, and it essentially identifies how we're going to spend our federal funding over the next 20-plus years. The middle is our transportation improvement program. That's our short-range program, and that identifies investments that are going to be carried out in that short range. We'll be updating that throughout the next few months and adopting in October 22. And we'll be involving you all and presenting a draft plan as well. And then finally, we've got our UPWP, or our work program, that lays out the planning studies and work that staff is going to be engaged in and carrying out over the next 2 years. We're scheduled to adopt that next iteration of that in August of 2023. So here's where you all fit in. We have our Transportation Policy Board that's made up of all of the mayors in our region, whether they be county or city mayors, GNRC staff, transit representatives, Federal Highway Administration, and that's our voting board. And so they are the decision makers for how funding is spent within our region, but they're informed by all of our committees. So we have our Transportation Coordinating Committee made up of local planning staff and engineers, TDOT staff, and also Federal Highway. They help inform our Transportation Policy Board, and then we have our BPAC, that also helps inform our policy board on the bike and pedestrian issues that we're working on within those three main planning products, as well as any other planning products that we're working on. But I'll go in a little bit more on our roles and responsibilities as a BPAC in some following slides. And then we have, on the right, we have our staff, consultants that we hire for various planning activities, and our nonprofit partners. So these are the main responsibilities that we have as a BPAC. First and foremost, we convene to inform the region's bicycle and pedestrian planning and programming efforts. So through our regional transportation plan, you all helped prioritize projects through our BPAC priority areas. I don't know how many of you remember that, but that was a pretty good process where we figured out how we were going to incorporate and prioritize projects based on how they are improving bike and pedestrian issues. We have collaborated on bike and pedestrian issues and challenges in the region. Actually, the last meeting we had was our project delivery panel, where we had a few planners and engineers and TDOT staff talk about the challenges that exist trying to move bike and pedestrian projects forward in our region. And then just before that, we spent around 6 months developing our non-motorized risk index. So that's another role that we have as a BPAC, is to inform data analysis, and so that our staff can bring new data like the risk index to the BPAC, and you all can use that in the various work that you do in the bike and pedestrian world. And then we've moved into this a little more in the past year, but highlighting and promoting best practices in the region. We had a presentation from Andy Barlow from the city of Mount Juliet on their town center trail, and hopefully going into the future we'll get to actually visit in person some of these regional best practices, greenways and sidewalk projects, and other bike and pedestrian related projects that we want to highlight and promote. So these are the roles and benefits that that are the most important for the BPAC. You all show up here to represent your community or agency in regional conversations that have to do with bike and pedestrian issues. You attend and participate in meetings. You provide data and information and expertise. Each of you has a different expertise in terms of transportation and bike and pedestrian issues. And you provide feedback on the work that staff is doing to make sure that bike ped issues are incorporated into our planning documents. And then the benefits that you all get through being a part of BPAC, I think probably the most important is the access to member expertise. We get to have a place where we convene and people can contribute to collaborating on issues to solve some of the most significant bike and pedestrian issues in our region. We're also a forum for collaboration, as well as you have access to our research and analytics. So if there's something that you think we should be researching related to anything bike and pedestrian or active transportation, then we've got an awesome data team that can assist us in looking at either crash analysis or connectivity analyses and other data analytics. I'll just plug a few tools that we have. So this is our main website. You can also go directly to gnrc.org/transportation. This is where all our plans are housed, as well as our data portal. These are some of the main interactive tools that we have. So I think I've presented almost all of these to this group before, either virtually or in person. But we have our regional plan map, which essentially is just a map of all the investments we're making through our long-range plan in the region. We have our TIP database, which is on the top there, top right, where you can see all the short-range investments that are being made and any updates and funding details on those, as well as our TIP amendments. So any projects that are amended into our plan, you can see those on there. And I just wanted to plug TDOT's iTrip database as well. So any TDOT projects in our region, you can go and look at that database and see any details on that project, whether it be funding or where the project's at in its project development process. And then these are some of the bike and ped specific tools that we have. So the active transportation application, which I've sent out in emails before, so you all should have access to that, but that'll be in these slides as well. That essentially is just an application where we have various bike and pedestrian layers, whether they be latent demand or crash statistics, or it also houses our non-motorized risk index. So you can use that to do your own analysis or see how existing conditions and trends are changing over time. We have our crash dashboards, which are also on our data portal, where you can keep track of crashes that are happening. You can filter it down to bike and pedestrian as well, and see how many fatalities and serious injuries and general crashes are happening within our region. And then we've got our non-motorized risk index as an application as well. So before I move on to our feedback, does anybody have any questions? I know that I threw a lot at you, but does anything not make sense, or do you have any questions? Online, feel free to unmute or put something in the chat. Look at that real quick. All right, well, if nobody has any questions, I'll move straight into our recap of some of the feedback you all provided. So a few months ago, or I guess over the course of the last few months, I met with almost all of you, and we discussed sort of the main successes and failures of the BPAC, and how you all see the BPAC moving forward, and how we can best provide a space to accomplish all of the things that you all told me that you want to accomplish in the next few years, or just in general for the BPAC. So I'll talk about what went well first. So I heard from you that there were presentations and projects that you really liked hearing about. A lot of people mentioned the Town Center Trail. I think seeing a really progressive greenway project like that really allowed people to see how our region is succeeding. A lot of people mentioned the TDOT PRSI program. They didn't know about it before, so having that as a presentation and an additional investment into bike and pedestrian safety that people didn't know about was helpful for people. I think people liked the presentations on data that we had. Our data team did a great job looking at the most pressing bike and pedestrian issues. So a few of those were the non-motorized risk index, as well as some equity presentations on some of our vulnerable populations, and just general safety conditions and trends that we presented on. I think people liked the discussions on bike and pedestrian issues, the project delivery panel we had, as well as a funding breakdown of how we invest through our plans, the federal dollars that were given in the region. And then things that we can improve on. Obviously, we've been virtual for a long time, and so I think that people probably burned out a little bit. I know I did. But providing more time for discussion rather than presentations, and then a little bit more context. So people actually mentioned that they wanted an MPO 101, so that's why I started with that, just to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of we know exactly what we're doing and what the organization does. And then the third thing I heard was adding more variety to meeting topics. After these slides, I'll present a meeting calendar and a list of topics that people requested so that you all can see what we have planned for the next year and suggest any additional topics that you want to cover. This is just some feedback on some of the topics that we did cover and some topics that we should cover in the future. People want more updates on local bike and pedestrian planning activities, sort of any of the plans that are happening or projects that are happening around the region that you wouldn't normally find out about through news articles or through your own work. There was a large consideration of accessibility. So I think we'll try to incorporate that into future presentations and discussions. People asked for field trips to recently completed projects. I think that would be really fun, and it would be a good way for us to highlight all of your communities that you represent and the good planning that's happening there. I think since not everyone was as well versed on funding and project delivery, people wanted to take a deeper dive into that to understand the challenges that exist within our region, as well as more educational presentations on how funding is distributed and what grant opportunities there are out there to fund projects. And then to explore traffic safety and police reporting, how crashes are reported, and sort of what goes into that process so that people are more aware of how the statistics get to our data. So this is our meeting calendar. There's only 3 meetings that we've actually penciled in. So it's going to be a mix between virtual and in person. I think it's a lot to ask you guys to come to an in-person meeting every month, and so we'll sprinkle those in based on what we're presenting on or what kind of discussion we're having. I think the more discussion-based and field trips obviously are going to be in person, but maybe some presentations will be virtual. So next meeting, we'll hear about the Sumner County Bike and Pedestrian Plan, and I don't know if any of you remember, but our safety performance measure targets that we're required to update as an MPO, we'll talk about that as well. So these are some of the future topics. I've broken them down into field trips and presentations, events and panels. So some of the field trips that were mentioned, obviously the Town Center Trail, which you guys have already seen, as well as to meet other members of the Mount Juliet BPAC. I think that would be cool to meet other regional BPACs. A tour of some bike and pedestrian projects in Gallatin. We haven't penciled that in yet, but I think that would also be a good field trip, as well as a tour of Vanderbilt and all of the bike and pedestrian improvements and parking improvements they've made, and a tour of Sunset Road, the Sunset Road project in Brentwood. And then some of the presentations, a traffic safety and police reporting presentation. John Vick from our Tennessee Department of Health has been working with our data team on acquiring hospital discharge data to better report on fatalities and serious injuries. So hopefully that can be a future presentation that we host, as well as accessibility and design. And then some of the events, National Bike to Work Day, I believe that's in May, and then Pedestrian Safety Month, which is October. I think it would be cool to have some sort of event that was BPAC sponsored, or we join somebody else's event. And then have a panel on grant opportunities, whether it's state funding or federal funding, letting members know exactly what the opportunities are to fund bike and pedestrian projects. So I'll stop there. Does anybody else have any other topics or upcoming efforts that you think the committee should engage in, or do you have any feedback on any additional feedback that we didn't capture from the check-ins? And if you're virtual, feel free to just unmute yourself or type in the comments. Thank you. Yeah.
Robert Johnson with TDOT. Certainly interested in TDOT using this forum as part of our public consultation. I'd like to mention Marcy later on perhaps. But yes, I think that this is a useful forum for us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe we have particularly good public access at the moment, and so this would certainly be a forum where we would like to do that.
Right.
I don't think we might have to formalize that.
Sure. I mean, It doesn't even need to be formal. It can just be as programs come up that you think that the BPAC can provide input on. I think you can just let me know, and we can make sure that that's on the agenda.
As an example of a win-win or a usefulness of this project, yeah, I would love to mention one, perhaps at the end, or give me a few minutes and we advance to talk about something out there, and we can both converse, and I think it's useful.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have any topics or upcoming efforts?
Hello, Daniel.
Yeah, is that Bill?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
The consultant team that is preparing the Sumner County Active Transportation Plan is winding up their efforts. And it might be a good idea after they've done that to, if you can, get them to present to this committee and or the MPO as a whole on what they've come up with. And so I don't know exactly when it's going to be finished, but it's winding up.
Yeah, I've actually been communicating with Robbie from your consultant team, and
Okay.
he said that hopefully in February we can have a presentation on that plan.
Okay, you beat me to it then.
But thanks, Bill. I think that's a great point. Chris, I think you.
Question about the safety and police reporting. Well, so we've seen kind of the heat maps of where a lot of the accidents are happening, where we know that safety is not great. Do we have overall usage data so we can kind of see, okay, there's a lot of accidents here, but there's also really, really high usage, so it's not more dangerous? Will that be incorporated in that presentation?
So we've talked about this at a few meetings before, but we don't have bike and pedestrian usage data. We're working on acquiring that, and TDOT actually has a program where they will be giving us counters to start counting data, but we do have that data generally for vehicles. So some of that will be incorporated, but we definitely need to improve on how we're capturing bike and pedestrian usage. Sure, yeah. Oh, I'll restate it. So I guess the last question that was asked from Christo was about how we're capturing usage data and how that relates to traffic safety and police reporting. And I guess you heard my response, but that was the question. Anybody else have any additional topics or things they want to say? Sean?
I was going to mention this as part of the member update, but Daniel alluded to the infrastructure investment in Caldwell, federal funding, though there is a uninvestment there that will be relevant to this committee. But we'll be happy to. Changes to our existing sort of legacy program to incorporate that in street, SUV, safety system approach, all of that sort of thing. We'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great presentation. So for those of you virtual, Sean Santaya from Federal Highway suggested a presentation on the new grant opportunities available, specifically some of the complete streets and bike ped safety related ones through the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. I think that would be a great presentation to bring to the BPAC, especially as those discretionary grants, we get more information on them and when they'll be available. Yes.
Where does Tennessee stand, or maybe to start reading on the use of like bicycle signals applications helping control the fire?
Robert, and if you want to take that.
Sorry, could you clarify when you say the control compliance?
Well, when I worked in Chicago, I worked on a lot of bike and ped projects as an engineer, and a lot of areas that had high bike usage had very poor compliance with, stopping at, locations where they're supposed to stop. And so we found that when we used the bicycle signal specifically for them, they knew that they had, they were being represented, and they knew that when they got their grid signal when they were years ago, that it wasn't like they were just trying to open the loop with the technical there.
I'm not aware of the issue of Prsi.
Yeah, that might be easier. Yeah, so the question was how the state treats compliance and incorporating bike and pedestrian signals in the projects that we're doing in the region. Is that a good way to? Yeah. Okay, go for it, Michelle.
I am Rochelle from NDOT, and I can't speak for the whole state, but I will say that Brad Freeze, who just came from TDOT, is actually working on that as we speak. We hope that we do have some bicycle signals, as you might be aware, on DeMondrian Street. But there are, we have to work with FHWA basically to get permissions for some experimental bike signals and automatic detection. So I guess I'd encourage you to coordinate with NDOT staff on, and Jason Radinger is on the phone as well. Hi, Jason, in the future. So, yeah.
And I'll add, I don't know how many months ago this was. I want to say this was like June of 2021. We had FHWA and some consultants come in and present on the Safe Transportation for Every Pedestrian program, where we highlighted 7 different engineering strategies to improve bike and pedestrian safety, many of which were signalization improvements. So I think that was really helpful for the BPAC, and I think we can do stuff like that in the future to make people more aware of the more progressive and safety-specific engineering treatments that we can use on bike and pedestrian projects in the region that we're not currently using. Anyone else have a comment either online or in person? Okay. I might.
But yeah, no, I'll have to go back and look into where we're at with that, and you know, that's what we're going to be doing for the national question. Yeah, I think they might move on.
Yeah, I know I think I sent out to the BPAC when the Federal Register was open for MUTCD comments. I think I sent that out to the BPAC for anybody who wanted to provide comments on some of the updates that were happening. So I think that would also be a really good presentation to have, is the MUTCD update and what that means for our region, as well as just bike pedestrian issues in general. Anybody else?
Well, I can go now or wait.
With the Vision Zero? Yeah. You want to just come up and do it?
Rochelle again. So yesterday we had our NDOT and Mayor Cooper had our public forum for Vision Zero, which probably most of you, if not all of you, are in the room are familiar with. But Vision Zero is really an effort it's a comprehensive effort to reduce eliminate to zero our traffic fatalities, crashes, and severe injury crashes involving all roadway users. So Diana Alarcon just started 2.5 weeks ago as NDOT's new director, and she has a lot of energy, comes from Tucson, which was kind of the birthplace of the pedestrian hybrid beacon, which Sean and others know, probably both Sean's, that's one of our STEP countermeasures, so safe transportation for every pedestrian countermeasures. And there's, just a lot of work to be done on designing those 7 effective countermeasures in Nashville. So yesterday was a big kind of public kickoff forum, and it went well. And I know that Diana is going to be working a lot with the NDOT staff on creating the action plan, the 5-year action plan, and and all of those implications. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I watched that meeting. I think it was really good to see. I hadn't seen Diana speak yet, and I think she's a really good fit. And I think that I'm excited to see what kind of implementation strategies we're going to see through the Vision Zero action plan. All right. Well, if nobody has any other suggested topics or comments on the feedback that I presented on, I think we can move into member updates. So I guess the best way to do this, we'll go in person first, and you guys can just come up here. You can just say your name and your organization and maybe one thing in the last year that you accomplished or your organization accomplished that's significant. And then Robert, I think we'll end with you, and I'll go through some of the grant awards. All right, so Marty, do you wanna start, and we'll go around the room? Yeah, you can come up there.
I'm Marty Tank with Bike Walk Brentwood. The biggest things that we have are current projects, not so much what we've accomplished over the last year. And the biggest thing right now is we're working on a mountain bike project between Franklin and Brentwood to connect the two cities, and it will be the first actual trail connection between the two cities, albeit a little bit more unconventional when you think about the multimodal dimension, but it's not something that other cities like Duluth and Minnesota aren't doing. So it's really exciting to see that as an opportunity. We talked to the city yesterday about our vision, and they were pretty excited about it. There's definitely some hurdles and challenges we have to overcome, but it's definitely something that's doable. And that's the thing that we're most excited about right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to go next, Sean?
Hey everybody, Sean Santaya again with the Federal Highway Administration. If I can go over more than one thing, Daniel, if that's all right. I already mentioned the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or bipartisan infrastructure law. We're releasing more information on the funding programs, really on a daily basis for that. So most recently, we issued fact sheets for our legacy programs, our CMAC, Surface Transportation Block Grant, STBG, our HSIP, our safety program, TA, Transportation Alternatives. So we're issuing fact sheets, getting ready to issue apportionment notices and make that funding available to state DOTs. And there are there's a lot of sort of nuances. Most of the programs have stayed largely the same, but there are nuances to each to promote things like complete streets, incorporating equity into our planning and programming processes and project selection processes. Incorporating, we're trying to really promote a safe systems approach to our programs. USDOT is largely bought in on Vision Zero, and we're looking at what we can do to take advantage of our authorities and responsibilities to help to influence our states and our locals to move in that direction. Kind of in that same vein, just released this morning, so I don't have details on it. We did just release a national roadway safety strategy. So I don't have the details on it, but again, my understanding is that furthers our safe systems approach across all USDOT modal agencies, looking at what we're doing to take into account vulnerable users, to understand the full array of things that address roadway safety, human behavior, infrastructure, emergency response, all those sorts of things. We also released planning emphasis areas, and these are this is a guiding document to our states and MPOs as they're carrying out their planning processes on different national priorities that we're asking them to consider. And so equity is one of those. Complete streets is in there. using data-driven transportation decision-making is another one in there. So, we'll be leaning on guys like the GNRC here to say, hey, what are you guys doing to further the federal mission in this area with the funding that we're providing. And then locally here, I'll just briefly mention we're going to be kicking off our federal certification review for the planning process for this area. So every 4 years, we go within the Federal Highway Administration locally here. We do take a certification action of the planning process, certify that the planning process that these guys are carrying out is compliant with all of the regulatory requirements. And we look for what are those opportunities to enhance the planning process. We look for what's going really well. What are some of the best practices? So we'll be having conversations with them and issuing a certification probably in August. So if possible, we'll include the BPAC in those conversations, Daniel. So that's all that I had.
All right, thank you, John.
Daniel, this is Evan Espy with Empower Tennessee. We've been working on the past year with Lime scooters and microtransportation. They're working on a whole new line of accessibility features and actual vehicles for people with disabilities. And they're going to be rolling those out in Nashville soon. And the formal announcement is going to come at an event that we are hosting virtually in April. On transportation and accessibility. We're going to have consumers, individuals with disabilities talking about ways that they have managed transportation when they live in non-metropolitan areas. And we're also still in the planning phases, but hoping to have some people from WeGo and what used to be Access Ride talk about the positives and the key points and the ways to navigate that system as easily as possible. So that will be in April, and I will share more details as they come along.
Evan, thank you. I remember you mentioning that in our check-in. I think it would be great I will send out the invite for that virtual meeting or presentation that you mentioned. But I also think it would be a great idea if you could come present to the BPAC on the work that you've been doing on that at some point. It can be any time in the next year, whenever you finish that project up. But thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned to you in our one-on-one, it'd be great to get Robert of Lime involved. He's making frequent trips to Nashville because right now they don't have a person on the ground here in Nashville. They had a little turnover change in staff, so he's been kind of covering both duties. So there's a chance that he may be able to make a presentation, or at least I want to do an introduction to you individually if it's not something more formal through this meeting.
Great. I'll look for that email too. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, go for it.
And I'm Matt Ricciardi with representing the Mount Juliet BPAC. And one of our recent things we did was we just recently had a ribbon cutting for our Belinda Parkway sidewalks. That was, I believe, our first grant we received, and it's been several years in the making to get that project across the finish line. So we're really excited about that. And then we also were just recently awarded a grant for the Town Center Trail Phase 3. So essentially, we're extending the Town Center Trail about another half mile from Green Hill Road down to the Mount Juliet Elementary School. So, thank you. Teresa, you were going?
Hi, my name is Teresa Anderson from the Tennessee Housing Development Agency. I'm definitely not speaking for the whole agency here. It's been quite a year for us, but as far as the research department goes, we are finally getting into dashboarding, which is really exciting because all of our research and data is static. So we currently have a draft housing indicators dashboard that we are just working on getting, complying with our website and getting that all worked out. But it's really exciting because our next dashboard we're trying to do is a housing affordability index. which is where we'll definitely lean on the intersectionality between transportation and housing and try and get, transit, sidewalks, all different data points like that. So that's what we're up to at THDA research.
Thank you. Are those two, the housing indicators and the housing affordability index, are those things that you would want to bring to BPAC to either present on or get feedback on?
Sure, absolutely. I definitely the affordability index once we get that up and running, but the housing indicators dashboard is also just a fun, hopefully, way to explore data about Tennessee. So when that's published, I'll definitely.
Great. Well, I'll contact you offline and we'll figure out a good meeting for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Chris, you want to go there?
Hi, Christopher Stowe from the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. Biggest news from our organization this year, not transit related necessarily, but we did break ground on a new building at the corner of Woodmont and Belmont in Green Hills in Nashville. So expanding, not just our resources for our team, but for the nonprofit community at large. We'll have some kind of shared facilities there that are open for other nonprofits to use. So that's kind of what we're focused on and excited about. Phase 1 should be done in October, so I invite you to come see us.
It could be a field trip in the future. Thank you. Do you have any other updates for us? Okay. We just want to do one from CDOT, one from you guys. Yeah, can we have that? Yeah. Shall I do that separately? Yeah, do that separately and then we can do that more.
Robert Johnson with TDOT's Multimodal Planning Office. First of all, we are fully staffed in the Multimodal Planning Office, which chiefly does project review of every project that TDOT generates is reviewed internally by our office for multimodal accommodations. And then we run a few grant programs, which I'm just going to talk about, as well as try to lead policy and data gathering around active transport for TDOT. That's sort of generally what we split our time doing, but we are fully staffed. There are 2 managers and 3 of us actually working away. 3 of us are here today. So the Great Resignation has actually benefited my particular office. There's been an enormous turnover in TDOT, just as there has apparently been in every other organisation. But our particular office of active transport people is actually fully staffed, which has apparently never happened before, or certainly never happened in anybody's living memory who works in our particular division. So we're pretty excited about that, and feel free to hold our feet to the fire, therefore, because there's literally more hours in the day available. If you've got an active transport question for TDOT, there's more of us, and we have more hours. So go ahead and hold our feet to the fire on that one. Pardon me. Public consultation is one of the many topics we'd all like to see improved with TDOT. So I just wanted to call out Marty Tank. Mac Hatcher Parkway was recently built by us, and it has a very fine multi-use path running down the side of it. And that multi-use path was built in concrete with the joints that you get associated with the joints in a concrete path, rather than being built in asphalt. Our standard is for it to be built in asphalt, and I do not know why it was built in concrete. TDOT produced a very flashy video with drone footage, of course, showing how marvellous the street was. So Marty went ahead and produced his own video from Bike Walk Brentwood, also using a drone, and showing how awful it was to cycle along the multi-use path made with concrete joints in it. And very rightly raised the question of why was that design decision made, because road cyclists find it particularly uncomfortable, and concrete generally is harder than asphalt to walk on, so it's more uncomfortable even for a normal pedestrian to walk on, let alone a road cyclist who's going a bit faster and has narrower tyres. So this, for me, one, was an interesting exercise in asking all those questions, and I'm in the middle of asking all those questions of people within TDOT as to why those design decisions were made. But it did highlight for me that we don't have a formal consultation process. So one, as I say, do hold our feet to the fire on this one, because you should be doing. 2, we're going to be working on that consultation process. And 3, I really want to thank Marty for that video he produced. It was great, because I sent the video to a bunch of engineers, and they watched the video, and they knew what the question was. It was not a blame video, but it highlighted the problem, laid out clearly what it was, and I thought it was a very useful product. So thanks for the time and effort you put into that. And that came through, and I think that kind of consultation is exactly the way we want to go. So it was, although informal, it was great. I do want to highlight perhaps nothing this team may notice immediately, but because there's now 3 of us reviewing every single project that TDOT do, we are doing a much better job internally of advocating for walking and cycling infrastructure on all projects that TDOT proposes. I'm just going to go right ahead and say it. We're doing much better. Many of you here remember when it's just Jessica Wilson working away, the only advocate within TDOT, and now there's 5 of us. So it's literally a higher quality output from us when it comes to project reviews. We may not agree, as I've just highlighted there with Marty, we may not agree, but suffice to say there's more of us doing more quality work around active transport in TDOT, and I do think that's going to be positive. Of course, none of this stuff comes to construction for another 3 to 5 to 10 to 15 years, but I sincerely believe that the product quality of what's coming out of our review process is higher right now. I am not going to talk about multimodal access grant because that's going to come up under a later heading. What I would like to do is introduce William Rogers III, who, as I say, is one of the 3 new members of staff in our office, and he's going to talk about 2 other initiatives we've got going with a bit of news at the moment: the Pedestrian Road Safety Initiative, shame that Rochelle's just stepped out, and our statewide active transport plan, our own TDOT's internal statewide active transport plan. Over to Will.
Hello. So the plan, it came out last year in August, and so my first week coming here in August, I read through it all and decided, how we're going to go about deciding which actions to take. So within the plan, they've prioritized 20 priority number 1 plans, actions. And then so we decided we'll just pick 1 from each goal, and we're going to do 1 action this year. So we've now submitted that to our higher-ups and see if they approve of that. So that's the next thing we'll do. I'll kind of champion those and make sure it's on track. And the other thing is we have 12 active PRSI projects, but then we just selected 10 new ones. The big difference is previously they were very long, like the whole corridor for a mile or half a mile, and now it's like max 1,000 feet. So 2 intersections, 1 intersection, or a mid-block crossing. And then what I'm working on is to update that with recent crashes. So that was used with 2016 to 20 crashes, and now I'm going to update it with 17 to 21 crashes. But then that'll be fun to kind of see how it's changed recently, but also we're going to create one with transit, because right now the transit stops are not included. So that's that. And then the other fun thing we're doing is Robert and I decided we need to collect in one place all the active transportation plans across the state, and there's hundreds of them, of course, and there's new ones, and there's old ones, and there's one in Sumner County that's being worked on. And so we're trying, as we're doing these ESR reviews, we're collecting the link to the website and to the plan, the PDF, and we'd like to have an interactive map where anyone can zoom in. Here's Davidson County. Oh, I can see the TDOT plan, the FHWA. I can see the city. I can see the corridor plan here. That's a long-term project, but we're starting to collect those. Thank you.
One quick follow-up to that. GNRC has a inventory of plans, effective plans in our region, so I can send you that to check that off of your list.
This is perfect. This is why I came here. Thank you.
Will the 10 locations, you said those have already been selected?
Yes, and I don't know how we're going to announce it, but there's 4 in this region, and within GNRC too. There's nothing outside of GNRC that's in within region 3.
And so those projects are going to be more spot safety focused rather than corridor improvements.
Yeah, so we're still using the Spectacular 7, mid-block crossings, but they're very short. Sometimes it's just 2 intersections. We haven't decided what's going to happen where, but it gives us a better focus on, that 1 intersection instead of spreading the money out.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Somebody else looked in here. Anybody else online want to unmute and give an update? Oh, okay. Justin, you can go ahead.
Hey, this is Justin at WeGo. We've got a lot going on, but I'm going to limit myself to highlighting 3 items. First, this past fall, we extended our service hours on our top 9 corridors to past midnight, which has been a long time coming for us. But now 6 days a week, you can ride the bus past midnight and extended to 11:15 at night on Sundays as well. We are hoping to do more of that, contingent on funding, but next year looking to extend the span even later at night and add some earlier morning service as well. Second item, we're launching our quick ticket fare collection system now. It's actually been in operation for quite a while, sort of under the radar, but this is sort of the official launch. And so as part of that, we've got an event coming up on Transit Equity Day on February the 4th, and you can find some more information on that on our website. But really a big part of that will be a celebration of Quick Ticket. And so, yeah, we're really excited about that. And then the last thing I'll highlight, oh gosh, what was the third thing? The third thing I wanted to highlight was we're improving a whole lot of bus stops across the city and also working on 2 exciting transit center projects. So the Hillsborough Transit Center is nearing completion in front of Hillsborough High School. And then we are working on finishing up the designs for a facility in North Nashville at the intersection of Clarksville Pike and 26th Avenue. Really excited about some of the features we'll be including in that one. And then meanwhile, while we're also working on the facility itself, we're also working on some pedestrian upgrades kind of in the area surrounding the facility. So filling in some sidewalk gaps, crosswalks, those sorts of things to really try to make sure access to that facility is strong. So that is all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. 2 follow-ups on that. One, the quick ticket option. I have my card now, and it's so much easier to be able to reload that instead of having to actually go to WeGo Central. So I commend you all on actually making that program happen. I think it's going to be a game changer. And 2, I think the pedestrian upgrades and bus stop improvements once you all are finished with those, would be a really good presentation. Or maybe we could take a field trip to one of them in the future with the BPAC.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks. Anybody else online? Okay. Councilwoman Henderson, feel free to unmute.
Thank you, Daniel. This is Councilwoman Henderson. I serve on our Public Works Committee of the Metro Council, and also now our Traffic and Parking Commission. I'm chairing our Charter Revision Committee. We will be advancing in Nashville a charter revision proposal, and that has implications on our new DOT, which is presently kind of operating through MOU because the Public Works Department is in our charter, and so we'll be working on that in the winter as we move towards a ballot potentially, I think, in August. We're excited about our new director, Diana Alarcon, arrival, and the council is definitely wishing her all the best. Rochelle shared with you about the Vision Zero Master Plan process. I wanted to let folks know that our street tree specifications updated after a lot of internal cross-departmental work are now live online at nashville.gov. And those support our legislative expansion of our street tree requirements. Nashville had required street trees only in our downtown code, and we have now expanded those requirements aligned with our sidewalk requirements for all commercial and multifamily development in GIS mapped Nashville Next centers. So those are visible, all tiers of our centers on our general plan. When sidewalks are required in those areas, now street trees are required. So that specifications document just came online a few weeks ago, kind of lagging a little bit the effective date of that legislation, which has been in place for a while. Our big sidewalk requirements expansion that we did back in 2017 and then updated in 2019 remains and is yet again under legal challenge from the Beacon Center. But we have withstood two previous challenges from Beacon, and so we're standing strong with that. And I still feel very strongly that that is good policy and a really good strategic framework for some of our more kind of sprawled Middle Tennessee regions when we're trying to require infrastructure kind of 80 years later and backwards. So I always welcome other cities to be in touch with me on the policy front as to infrastructure requirements, sidewalk requirements, street trees, and otherwise. Also in Nashville, we're discussing e-bikes on greenways. And there was a Greenways Commission meeting or work session, they called it, yesterday. I and others asked that the draft report that was presented at that meeting be posted online. Again, this was just yesterday, so kind of looking for that. That should be prior to their next work session, which is going to be on February 9th. And already in the midst of that Greenways Commission meeting, it was suggested or assumed that this matter will be deferred on the Parks Board's February agenda. So kind of the tier of it is the Greenways Commission is making a recommendation to the Parks Board, which would make a recommendation to Council. As you all may know, Class 1, Class 2 e-bikes are by state law presently allowed on greenways. I guess the state law also contemplates that local legislative bodies could restrict or amend that for safety purposes. And so, yes, so that is in progress, and I think there'll be future opportunities for public engagement on that. And then our traffic calming application window. Now in Nashville, we have two windows each year, almost a month long in January and July. And once you're kind of in the queue, you stay in the queue, and then as new applications come in, they get prioritized. There are well over 200 streets or neighborhoods in that queue. And so, that remains challenging, but that is a place where, we can deliver for folks much more quickly than we can, say, with major sidewalk infrastructure that, as we all know, is much more kind of time consuming and involved from an engineering perspective. So I guess I would defer to Rochelle or others at NDOT if there's anything that I have left off that needs to be mentioned from the Nashville side. But with that, I thank you all.
Thank you, Councilwoman Henderson. I think Michael Briggs has got his hand raised. You can go ahead, Michael.
Hey there. This is Michael Briggs with Vanderbilt University, and just wanted to provide a few quick updates on the bicycling front with us. We have submitted our bike-friendly university application again. We were designated a bronze bike-friendly university in 2015, and we're simply re-upping the same status for now. And we're hoping to get the feedback from the application soon and use that as a guiding document to help us raise our status eventually to gold over the next few years. We're also working with NDOT and coordinating on some walk and bike plan infrastructure and also bikeways on campus. And so just wanted to let you all know that we're actively talking through some different infrastructure ideas. And then we've also been developing our walk and roll loop schematic. And so that's something that we've almost got fleshed out, and we'll be starting to get cost estimates on that going forward. So that's all that I have.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
I believe Bill is next.
Okay, just quickly, I've already mentioned the Sumner Active Transportation Plan is finishing up. We are recipients also in Gallatin of 2 CMAQ grants. One is for a multi-use trail along Lock 4 Road, which goes down to a park on the Cumberland River. And we also have one for a segment of the Vol State Gap Trail Greenway near the Kennesaw Farms area. So we'll be working to put those in the TIP and hopefully get those underway here real soon. Our Planning Commission also approved a conceptual master plan for the redevelopment of Nat Caldwell Park, which some of you may know is on Station Camp Creek as you come into Gallatin. And that plan calls for an extensive multi-use trail that envelops the whole basin there. So that will be part of the Vol State Trail Gap, Vol State Gap Trail, and will be a critical component in tying in Gallatin with the Hendersonville and Station Camp Creek Trail system. Also, we were fortunate to be recipients of a donation of property along East Camp Creek in Gallatin, which will also form the alignment of a segment of the Vol State Gap Trail. So that is property that we will not have to acquire as part of the development of that project. We will own it outright, and that will make that process a lot quicker for us and easier for us. So we were happy about that, and so I'll leave it at that. I think there's probably other things, but those are the big ticket items.
Thank you, Bill. Congratulations on your new grant awards. Anybody else online want to give us an update? All right, well, I'll give our update real quick. So here is a list of recent grant awards for 2 programs, one of which Robert runs, the Multimodal Access Grant. So these are the 3 most recent awards. The City of Lebanon got an award for their State Route 10 sidewalks and crossing improvements. City of Belle Meade for the same thing on State Route 1. And Williamson County, they will be building a multi-use path, sidewalks, and crossing improvements on State Route 106. Robert, I don't know if you want to provide any additional information on any of those.
I don't actually. Very embarrassingly, I didn't bring any supporting paperwork on those. I'm going to blow my own trumpet though, which is that we did 2 rounds of multimodal access grants. We received a lot of advice from the town that the timing of the grant rounds we had didn't match up with their budget creation. So therefore we are going to do, we did a 6-month round, and this is the result of that. And then we're going to start another round in a few months' time, again with the idea of announcing before Christmas, because apparently this integrates with the town's ability to budget the match requirements. They match up their grant applying with the amount in their budget that they allocate to the match. So a bit of our own trumpet blowing there. But yes, any questions? Sorry I can't answer them now, but happy to answer them if anybody has any questions about multimodal access grant.
Robert, on the multimodal access grant, have you guys put any thought into taking away the cap, the top dollar amount cap, and maybe awarding fewer projects with some higher dollar value?
Yes, actually. We're just now looking at different things that we could do with multimodal access grants. And the idea of taking away the $1 million cap and allowing people to apply for either multi-phase projects or multi-year projects that exceeded $1 million, that is under discussion. The pros of that is that they will allow a town, for example, a small town, to submit their entire bike tech plan. Say, great, we want to build this over 10 years, please give us $10 million over 10 years, for example, without altering our budget and our annual budget. Disadvantage, possibly if we did that, you get more applications from larger, well-resourced communities with the plans and with mega projects, and perhaps you get those people who might then crowd out the smaller communities and disadvantaged communities who are currently applying to us. And we're a big target for the disadvantaged and smaller communities because this particular grant is 95% funded by TDOT and 5% funded by the local community, whereas most grants are an 80-20 split. So actually, the community puts up less money for a multimodal access grant than they do for many other grant programs, and there's slightly less federal rules applicable. The smaller communities tend to like our multimodal access grant. So the phasing idea has pros and cons. But yes, we are considering. And if you've got opinions on that, love to hear them actually.
Yeah, I think we can talk some more about it. We've been doing tip workshops this month with county by county to just collect updates on existing projects. And there's a number of projects that kind of have like a variety of like funding sources, whether it be MPO's active transportation program funding, supplemental access, or the transportation alternatives program. And so, and a lot of multiple phase sidewalk or greenway projects that they want to do the corridor, but they're breaking it up to meet grant limitations. And so
Thank you.
we can explore that.
I agree. Yes, we're open to exploring that. Of course, everyone wants to have control of their budget from year to year. It's 100% state money. It's not a federal formula or even a federal money. So consequently, of course, it's not guaranteed. What the state legislature decides to give us each year is decided by the state legislature each year. And so again, we might get nervous about making multi-year promises to communities that we might not be able to keep. But yes, everything you said is great. And yeah, we should definitely talk about that. Thank you. And anybody else who's thinking on that idea would be welcome.
So for those of you online, the question was asked by Sean, is TDOT thinking of taking away the $1 million cap on the multimodal access grant? And Robert's response was essentially, yes, they're having conversations about it, but because it's state funded, the legislature decides how much money the grant is going to have available every year. And so it's a more complicated conversation. The other grant awards that I want to highlight are the Congestion, Mitigation, and Air Quality. Not all of these are specifically bike ped, but we actually had a lot of awards in our region. So Metro Nashville got an award for the Traffic Management Center. The City of Goodlettsville got an award for traffic improvements and traffic signal upgrades. The City of Gallatin for various intersection improvements. The City of Spring Hill and Thompson Station jointly applied and got an award for US 31 traffic flow improvements. City of Lebanon with their ITS project, and the City of Mount Juliet for their State Route 171 Mount Juliet Road ITS and signal improvements project. Yes.
The Sumner Trail phase 3
was a CMAQ award. Oh, right. I forgot that one.
Gallatin too for phase 2 of their sidewalk improvements.
Okay, I missed 2 of them. So the other 2 awards were Gallatin sidewalks phase 2 and the Town Center Trail that Matt mentioned as well. Marty, you have a question?
Right. Forgot to mention that.
You want to answer that, Robert?
For multimodal access grant, we had 70 applicants for $18 million, which we wanted to break down to $1 million max each. So essentially 70 applicants for 18 grants. CMAQ, I feel like it's 3 or 4 times oversubscribed, and I feel like I don't remember what percentage GNRC got relative to across the whole of the state. You've got a big chunk of them, I feel, in the national area. Maybe there's like 3 times that many grants. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7.
9 counting the 2 I missed.
Right. Maybe it's like 20, 30 wins, 25 wins, and it was either 3 or 4 times oversubscribed. Versus multimodal grant was 3 or 3.5 times oversubscribed.
So the question was how many applicants for the multimodal access grant and the CMAQ grant. I'll coordinate with Robert on getting that full list. Okay, so for CMAQ, 33 applications received, 62 million requested, and let's see how many, I don't think it says how many projects. Oh, 20 projects were awarded with 39 million statewide. Region 3 got 11 projects, so that's our region. Region 4, 6 projects. Region 2, 2 projects. And Region 1, 1 project. So we got a very large amount of those CMAQ funds for our region. Thank you, Sean. All right, one more slide. I'm just going to highlight some of the recently completed by Pedestrian projects. Bill, feel free to unmute after I finish this to give any more information. But the City Sidewalk Improvements Phase 1 for Gallatin was recently completed. As Matt mentioned, the Town Center Trail, or at least the most recent phase, was completed. I would encourage you all to check that one out. It's a really, really nice greenway. City of Mount Juliet also completed the LT Patton Elementary and Mount Juliet Middle Safe Routes to School project. And as well, for Mount Juliet, the Woodridge Place sidewalks were completed. Bill, I don't know if you want to give us any more information on the city sidewalk improvements for Gallatin.
That's the Browns Lane sidewalk. It was a sidewalk put in a median of a local street, and that's been completed. I think I did mention the last time we met in September that we also finished a Safe Routes to School project, which is along Hancock Street, including a crosswalk at Hancock and 109 intersection, which provides access and improvements around the Rucker Stewart Middle School. As mentioned just a minute ago, we do have a citywide Phase 2 sidewalks improvements, which part of that is shown on that map there, which includes Coles Ferry Road, which will tie that to a school. Red River Road along Hollow Pike, which also provides access to a school, and Boyers Avenue, which also provides access to a school. So those 3 little projects are wrapped into one Phase 2 application there. So.
Thank you, Bill. All right, well, I am just going to end with a plug. Well, actually, I'll do this first. I don't think Walk Bike is on the line, but they do an annual pedestrian memorial for all of the pedestrians who were killed in the previous year. So that's going to be on January 29th, this Saturday. I'll be there. I encourage all of you to attend if you have time. Gathering near 619 Millwood Drive at noon. I went to the one last year and the one the year before, and they're very powerful. I would definitely encourage everybody to attend that. I'm going to end with a plug of one of our dashboards. Ashley Glasscock on our data team created this dashboard, so it's essentially, I'm going to pull it up and see if I can share the screen. All right, so this is our month-to-date crash dashboard. It's updated every month with crash statistics. This is for our region. You can filter by counties in our region. You can also filter by modes. So if we wanted to see total non-motorist crashes up to this month, so here's 2021 on the far right. I think it's updated. So that's a lot of crashes so far, or there's a lot of crashes. 576. We can also filter by severity. So if you just wanted to see fatal non-motorist crashes or serious injury or severe, you can also see those back to 2015. And then on the bottom, you can see the trend over time and how that changes based on the year. So I've included a link of this in our slides, and I will also include it in a follow-up email. So does anybody have any questions or comments before we adjourn today, either virtual or in person? Carson?
Hi, just wanted to mention one more GNRC update. either relevant to those in this group or if you want to share it with your network. But we are hiring a few positions. We are hiring a planning intern, so if you know any students that would be looking. We are hiring a community planner for local land use planning. We are hiring a director of economic and community development. We are also hiring a transportation data modeler, so really focused in our research team. All of those are listed on gnrc.org/jobs. Please spread the word with your networks. We're trying to get the word out because we have had some great resignation experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Carson. All right, well, I appreciate everybody coming in person and tuning in virtually. I think this is a really great reconvening of our committee. Looking forward to a lot of the topics and presentations and field trips, hopefully, that we can do in the next year. So thank you, and feel free to take an extra lunch if you want to on the way. There's a lot of extras. All right, thanks, everybody.